So I was trying to come up with a topic for today's video, and I was just sitting on my couch for literally a couple hours, and I couldn't decide what I really wanted to discuss. I had several points I wanted to make, but none of those points would have made a full-length video. So instead, seeing that they're all pertaining to this upcoming season, I decided to throw all of these points together in one video and just title it as "You Should Know This." So now that you see where I'm coming from, let's get into it. So first off, recently, the NBA altered and implemented some new rules, which seemed to get a pretty positive response from the basketball community on social media. I'm not gonna lie though, I personally wasn't as enthusiastic. Before I explain why the rule changes didn't please me as much as it did for many other people, let me first explain what these new rules are. The first rule is the one that most people are talking about. Apparently, the league will now start penalizing players heavily for flopping. Since 2012, the NBA has already had a rule in place for flopping. The rule stated that any player who flops would first be warned, followed by fines in increments of $5,000 for each successful flop during the season. But here's the thing, the NBA has painfully under-enforced the rule. Since the implementation of the original flopping rule in 2012, there have been thousands of egregious flops by the players. Yet the league has only handed out a grand total of 31 fines to the players. As bad as that is, it's gotten even worse in recent years. I want you to think about this for a second. How many flops do you think you've seen in the last 3 years? Dozens? Hundreds? Too many to count? Well, not a single one of those flops were fined by the league. The last flopping fine goes all the way back to Marcus Smart on September 2nd, 2020. So now, this new flopping rule says that if a player flops, it will result in a loss of possession and a technical free throw for the opposing team. If this rule will actually be enforced, then it will be a much harsher penalty than simply fining a player who's worth over $100 million $5,000. But here's the thing, if the NBA didn't have the balls to enforce much softer penalties on players over the last decade, then what makes you think they'll have the guts to enforce these much harsher consequences in the future? Honestly, I feel like history is just repeating itself. The same enthusiasm and disappointment I experienced over the flopping rule in 2012 will be the same enthusiasm and disappointment many people will experience for the new 2023 flopping rule. To be blunt, what I think the league needs is not harsher flopping penalties, but simply a commissioner who actually has the spine to regularly enforce the penalties that are already in place, and then the players will take it more seriously. Obviously, I hope I'm wrong, and if years from now people are returning to this video and letting me know how wrong I was, then nobody will be happier than me, as I am anxiously awaiting the day that flopping becomes mostly a thing of the past. I will say this, the one thing I truly love about this new rule is how the NBA is implementing it as a one-year trial run for the 2023 to 2024 season. I think the league should experiment with one-year trial runs more often, in a variety of aspects. If the new change accomplishes the desired result, then roll with it. But if it doesn't, then simply scrap it after one season and move on to the next thing. So now, let's move on to the second rule change. The NBA has now decided that when a team challenges a call and it ends up being successful, the team will be rewarded by keeping their challenge. With that being said, the team's second challenge will be their final one even if it's successful. Personally, I have no issues with this rule whatsoever. The highest priority of the league should always be to get each call correct. I understand that with more challenges, the game will be slowed down, and it will inevitably add to the contest's run time. But let's be real, I think we all would much rather have that than a haunting miscall that could affect your team's outcome and be a sour memory for decades to come. At most, we're talking about a couple of extra minutes being added to the game's runtime. And personally, I always felt like the quote attention span critique was always a lame excuse for getting the calls wrong. Over the last 5 years, it seems like every big budget movie has turned into a 2.5 to 3 hour film. Yet people often still show up to theaters in droves. I don't think a few extra minutes to maintain the integrity of the game is going to be something that will ruin the experience for general audiences. So now that I've covered my thoughts on the new rules, let me give you some other random bits of information concerning some superstar players heading into next season, starting off with LeBron James. The King is about to start his 21st season in the NBA, and assuming he continues to play at an elite level, he'll be in some truly uncharted territory. In the history of the NBA, no player has ever made an All-NBA team in their 21st season. In fact, no player has ever averaged more than 8 points in their 21st season. So unless LeBron suddenly has his talent taken by the Monstars, he'll become the first. LeBron is becoming only the 6th player in NBA history to play 21 seasons in the league. The other 5 players were Kevin Garnett, who averaged 3.2 points, Dirk Nowitzki, who averaged 7.3, Vince Carter, who averaged 7.4, Kevin Willis, who averaged 2.4, and Robert Parrish, who averaged 3.7. In case you're wondering, that adds up to a total of only 24 points per game, which means that LeBron could easily outscore the other 5 players combined in their 21st season. If LeBron didn't already have the greatest longevity in the history of the game, he certainly will at the end of this upcoming season. In the last 3 seasons, Nikola Jokic and Joel Embiid have finished in the top 2 spots of the MVP race. In this upcoming season, they'll be trying to achieve history by extending that streak to 4 straight seasons. Only 3 other players in NBA history have finished in the top 2 of the MVP voting in 4 straight seasons. Those players were Tim Duncan, Larry Bird, and Bill Russell. With that being said, Jokic and Embiid have a lot of work to do if they want to catch the guys in the top spot, as Bill Russell and Larry Bird each made it 6 straight seasons as a top 2 MVP vote-getter. So last season, Luka Doncic and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander each averaged over 30 points per game before they reached the age of 25. This is obviously quite impressive, but it's actually a much better indicator for their careers than you might have thought. In the history of the NBA, 13 other players have had a season where they averaged at least 30 points per game before they were 25 years old. Incredibly, 11 of those 13 players ended their careers as an NBA champion. So although that elusive title has evaded these 2 greats up to this point, history tells us that they're likely to have at least 1 ring on their hand before it's all said and done. So what do you guys think? What is your opinion on the NBA's new rules? And what are you looking forward to most about this upcoming season? I look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comment section below. Thanks for watching as always. Make sure to like and subscribe for more basketball content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.